I've heard you're a famous rascal. Hey up, it's me. I'm back. Do a bit more reading. Uh, I'm going to read from one of my favourite books, a few passages from one of my favourite books. Now, this book, I've had it a while. I've had it probably about 10 years now, a decade. And it's just a book that I often come back to and that I pick up, maybe a couple of times a week when I'm bored and I just want something to read and, something to chuckle at and reflect on and something that I find really interesting from a character perspective, and I just think it's such a wonderful document to have in regards to a person. What can you really say about the man? If you know about him, understand about him, Napoleon Bonaparte. That's what this book's on. It's just gives me such a insight into the life of a man, who lived before, electronic media. He lived before any form of media. He lived before camera were invented, so we have actually no photos of Napoleon Bonaparte. We do have the odd photo knocking around of men who fought in his army, but when they were very old, in their 80s, late 80s, who'd fought at Waterloo under him, who'd served in his Imperial Guard. But we don't really have any, evidence considering, technological evidence concerns media, regards to such a man. And I just find that having this book, which is called Napoleon in His Time, and the details it goes into, not in regards to his military career, but in regards to his private life, it gives me an insight into the man he was. So yeah, I pick this book up regularly and I read it because I just find Napoleon Bonaparte such an interesting character. He's one of my favourite people from history, because of it. Mirrored in Napoleon is every aspect of the human condition, every aspect of the human and sapient traits within us. It's never been, in my opinion, in modern era, consider it last 1,000 years, it's never been on display more in someone more than it has in Napoleon Bonaparte. That good and bad in us, that conscientious enlightenment, and then the most base, primitive, sapient traits within us. The violence, the deceit, the deviancy, the ruthlessness. Yeah, he fascinates me. Really does fascinate me, Napoleon Bonaparte. So I'm going to read maybe 2-3 passages from this book, from different periods. It's set into periods. It's set from I think it's set from when he grew up, where he was born in Ajaccio, because Napoleon weren't a Frenchman, he were Corsican. Napoleon Bonaparte was born in Ajaccio on 15th of August 1769. And he weren't French, but I'm not going to go too far into that because it goes on and on and on. I could talk about it off the top of my head. And I think I'm going to do a video on Napoleon Bonaparte, just sit and talk about him. But I'm going to brush up on it first because, I've not been reading about him and his military career for a while now. And I can briefly discuss it, but there's some details I still want to brush up on before I sit down and discuss it. I might do that video sometime soon, but it's hard work doing videos, and I'm doing a lot of writing at the minute. Some things I post on social media, on Facebook, they're just some thoughts I post and recollections from previous writing I've done in past, which I never really had courage to express, and poetry. So I'm putting that on there and these videos, but every now and again, just to express myself, and no wrong with that. So yeah, I'm doing a lot of writing, but videos, they're hard work doing videos, and editing and stuff like that. It's very tedious hard work. It's very time consuming. And I'm trying to focus on other things at the minute, but I'll just keep doing some short videos every now and again. Anyway, I'll stop rambling on after I've read a couple of passages from this book. I might briefly discuss a few more books I've got on Napoleon, just very briefly. But I might discuss some books I'm currently reading now, or if it video goes on too long, I might do that in another video. The books that I'm currently reading at the moment. So yeah, I'll start with this passage, which I find it's just hilarious. It's very humorous, but it just gives you an insight into the man. Like I said, sorry as well. I rambled on and went off course. This book's set into periods of time, so it's set from when he was born in Ajaccio, going to Castiglione to his first campaign in 1796 in Italy, as commander of French forces in Italy. It goes from that period of time. Then it goes from Marengo to his victory at Marengo in 1800, on June 14th, 1800, which solidified his grasp on the inner turmoil that were happening in France at the time after the revolution. It gave him opportunity to solidify power. It made people of France realise we've got somebody here who can aspire us. Look at what he's done, which I can't go into because it's just too long. So yeah, it took power from that victory at Marengo in 1800 in northern Italy, and he became first consul of France then, but then he further solidified his power up to 1805 when his victory at Austerlitz which is known as his greatest victory, which it probably is because it was a masterpiece. But he crowned himself emperor before that in 1804, and he was coronated. Was coronated in 1804, 2nd December. But he crowned himself emperor before that. So his victory at Austerlitz happened on 2nd December 1805, on anniversary of his coronation. So that were a magnificent victory for him as well. But like I said, we are rambling on so much. It's set into periods of time. So then it goes from Austerlitz to Wagram, another famous victory of Napoleon's, one of my favourite campaigns, that 1809 campaign in Austria. His victory at Wagram, I think it were on 2nd and 3rd of July 1809 at Wagram in Austria, just a few miles northeast of Vienna, with a big Charles. And then it goes on from Wagram to Russia. He were defeated in Russia without a doubt, but that really the seeds of his ruin maybe have been sowed before then, but it were after that period of time his army were destroyed, but he rebuilt a new one again. Not going into it, it's too much detail. So then from Russia in 1812 it goes to Fontainebleau, I think, is it? Yeah, from his first abdication in 1814, which there's another huge war in between 1813 and 40 to his abdication in 1814 on 20th of April 1814. And then it goes from Fontainebleau to his final defeat at Waterloo, at Andrew's British, and mixed nation, mixed army, mixed nationality army, commanded by Duke Wellington, Lord Wellesley, in 1815. So it's set into periods of time. This passage I'm going to read at first, it's set in the period of time from Austerlitz to Wagram, so it could have been anywhere from between 1805, 1806, it will have been anywhere from 1806 to summer before summer 1809, but we're probably looking at about 18, 1808, I should imagine, that this passage, the era which this passage describes. So anyway, I'll stop rambling on and I'm going to read it to you. This one's called The Younger Set. It's titled The Younger Set. He found his truest relaxation in children, and it was only with them that he showed a human side. Whoever, as Rustam brings out, the children might be, Rustam was his Mamluk servant that he brought back from Egypt. So, anyway, this is the passage itself. That was just a prior, inserted passage. One day the emperor was making his toilet. Little Napoleon, son of Louis and Hortense, is announced. He says to come in. He takes him in his arms. He kisses him often. He was between the two windows. He shows him the garden and says, "Whose garden is that?" He replies, "Uncle's." After that he pulls his ear, saying, "After me it will be for you. I hope you will have a good estate." The emperor was very fond of children. He would often ask my son. He would often ask after my son. One day I brought him down to the emperor's bedroom. His Majesty was there. He said directly, "So here you are, my fine fellow." He was 4 years old at the time. He called everyone too, and as little shyness as usual at his age. The emperor had him put in the window recess, and the child began straight away fingering his orders and asking about them. The emperor said, "People only get things like these if you are good. Are you good?" He immediately opens his eyes wide and says, "Just look in my eyes. I've heard you're a famous rascal." I could not help being shocked at his saying this too, and tried to make him a sign, but the emperor noticed and made him turn his back, and the child went on prattling harder than ever. The emperor asked, "Can you say your prayers?" "Yes," said he, "I say my prayers every day." The emperor asked, "What's your name?" "My name is Akil Rustam." "What's yours?" I came up and I said, "It's the emperor." "Oh, is it you that goes hunting with Papa?" His Majesty said to me. "Doesn't he know me?" "Sire, he has seen more often your Majesty in a hunting coat. That's why he knows your Majesty less in this one." The emperor pulled his ears and rubbed his head. The child was delighted, and it seemed that he had still plenty to say to him, but his Majesty said, "Now I must have breakfast. You shall come and see me again." Madame Durand, the Empress's first lady-in-waiting, has a couple of stories. Napoleon was very fond of children. He enjoyed vexing them, teasing them. One day when Hortense's two young sons were at breakfast with him, little Prince Louis, aged 3.5, was eating a boiled egg. Napoleon got him to look away by drawing his attention to a plaything and stole his egg. When the child saw it was gone, he picked up his knife and said to Napoleon, "Give me back my egg or I'll kill you." "What? You want to kill me, your uncle? You rogue! I want my egg or I'll kill you." Napoleon gave it back, saying, "You'll be a fine blade." Another time, Princess Elisa's daughter, a little girl of 5 and very proud, was likewise breakfasting with Napoleon. "Well, mademoiselle," said he, looking very grave, "this is a nice thing I hear. So you wet your bed last night?" He was making it up. The little princess stood up on her chair and said with an air of injured dignity, "Uncle, if you can only talk nonsense, I'm going away." Napoleon was much amused, but had great difficulty in getting her to sit down again. Yeah, I think it just gives you, a fantastic insight into a man that very humorous, Napoleon, most ridiculous man who ever lived. He were, That's why I like him. He brought a lot of upset to people's lives, caused a lot of misery because of warfare, but, people often forget as well, Napoleon, the majority of wars were waged against him. We went to war against him, declared war on him. I think either 4 or 5 times. I'll have to brush up on my knowledge in regards to that. But yeah, there was really 7 wars. His invasion of Russia, and 7 wars. They call them wars, coalition wars, because we were always co-allied against him. British, Austrians, Russians, Prussians. So this were a man who one of the most powerful men that ever lived, you know, and I just think it just gives a remarkable insight into his, you know, his character and his sense of humour, that passage. So, yeah, I'm going to read this one now, which I also like. I thought I've lost it. I don't think I've lost it. Silly me, yeah. What do you like? Yeah, I think I might have to leave that one because I think I've lost a piece of paper, it's slipped down. Hey ho. To get myself some new bookmarks. But I've got this part here, which probably, in fact I found it. So I'll read that third one after this. But I'll read this one, this second one that I chose to read. This one is from the period of time from Marengo 1800 to 1805 is Victory at Austerlitz. So again, it could be any time, any one of those years between that period of time from 1800 to 1805. But this one's titled Napoleon and his Doctor. The passage again starts off with Rustam, his Mamluk servant who he brought back from Egypt. So I'll get on with it. Rustam was always in attendance in these private apartments. He shows us Napoleon chatting with his head physician, Carvisart. M. Carvisart was there every 2 or 3 days at Napoleon's toilet. One day M. Carvisart is announced. He says to come in. There you are, great quack. Have you killed many people today? Not many, sire. His Majesty, Carvisart, I shall not live long. I feel weaker than 5 or 6 years ago. He said this laughing. Carvisart says, Sire, I am not here to prevent you. His Majesty pulls his ears laughing. You think that, Carvisart? I shall bury you. Carvisart says, I'm sure, sire. Me and plenty more. His Majesty says, smiling, hold your tongue, quack. What's that in your hand? It's my walking cane, sire. It's very ugly. It is not nice. How can a man like you carry an ugly stick like that? Sire, this stick, it cost me a lot. And I had it very cheap. Well, Carvisart, how much did it cost? 1,500 francs, sire. That is not dear, His Majesty says. What, 1,500 francs? Show it me, that ugly stick. His Majesty examines the stick in small detail. He sees the portrait in gilded medallion of Jean-Jacques Rousseau on the knob of the stick. Tell me, Carvisart, is it Jean-Jacques' cane? Where did you get it? I suppose one of your clients made you this present. Indeed, this is a pretty keepsake you have. Carvisart says, excuse me, sire, it cost me 1,500 francs. His Majesty, after all, Carvisart, is it worth more? For he was a great man, that's to say, a great quack like Carvisart. Carvisart was laughing. His Majesty says, after all, Carvisart, he was a great man in his way. He did some fine things. After that, he pulls M. Carvisart ears and says, Carvisart, you want to mimic Jean-Jacques? It's a doctor. Brilliant. After that, His Majesty says, Carvisart, there are many sick people in Paris. He answers, why? Not too many, sire. Tell me, Carvisart, how much money did you earn yesterday, in the morning? Why, sire, I haven't counted. You earned at least 200 francs. Not so much, sire. But, Carvisart, you don't take less than 20 francs a visit. Excuse me, sire, I have no fixed sum. I was taking even 3 francs. Well done, you are humane, Bonaparte replies. Just then His Majesty was dressing to go shooting in the forest of St. Germain. Carvisart, shall I have a fine weather for my shoot? Yes, sire, it's a splendid day. Do you shoot, Carvisart? Yes, sire, I do sometimes. And then you let your patients die. Where do you shoot, Carvisart? At Chateau, sire, on the Duke de Montebello's estate. Carvisart, I want you to come shooting with me. I want to see whether you're a good shot. Sire, it is a great honour. I have not got my guns. You shall have my guns. Do you hear, Rustam? Sire, I shan't be able to use your Majesty's guns. Why not, quack? Because I am left-handed. Never mind, I want you to come. There is no time to send for your guns. Corvisart got into the master of the horse's carriage and set off for Saint Germain. That was the only time M. Corvisart went shooting with His Majesty. Yeah, so that was the second one. I'm going to read the third one now. Again, that second one, I think it's just fantastic. It shows Bonaparte's sense of humour. But I think it also shows that he treated professionals for what they were. He let them know what he thought of them, but in a humourful way. You know, you have to do that with certain professionals, because professionals, they're not there to have an opinion, you know, professionally. You're just there to do a job. But you're okay to have a sense of humour every now and again. I think people need to realise that sometimes, you know. You know, if you're of a certain profession, you need to do your job, you know. And if you're going to get above your station in some way, you need to be chastised for it slightly, don't you? What better person to chastise a doctor than Napoleon Bonaparte? I just find that passage fascinating. This third passage I'm going to read is called The Master's Voice, which again I think shows a side to him that's very interesting, and there's many other passages in this book that I could choose which, you know, show him, you know, in a more ruthless light, much more so. But this is called The Master's Voice. So in many of these there's a prior passage, you know, I'll start off with that. On the other hand, there was no quarter for what he considered sins against his authority. He must have forgotten his own youthful absences without leave when he addressed to General Gouvion St. Cyr, the threat of which Chaptal, amongst others, was astonished witness. One day General Gouvion St. Cyr approached at the levee in the Tuileries. Napoleon addressed him in a composed voice. Napoleon, General, are you just back from Naples? Gouvion, yes, sire. I surrendered the command to General Perignon, whom you sent to replace me. Napoleon, no doubt you have leave absence from the Minister of War. Gouvion, no, sire, but I had nothing further to do at Naples. Napoleon, if you are not on your way to Naples in 2 hours, before noon you will be shot on the plain of Grenelle. I saw him behave in the same way to General Loison, who had left his command at Liège to spend a couple of days in Paris on urgent business. Sometimes this will be obeyed at all costs took a sensational form, as at Boulogne on the 20th of July 1804. Constant's account of the incident is staggering. One morning, as he mounted his horse, Napoleon announced that he was going to review his naval forces. This is at a time when he was poised to invade Great Britain at Boulogne. He had got his forces, you know, massed at Boulogne. He was seriously considering invading Great Britain in 1804. You know, we know the story. I'll go too far into that, but this is at Boulogne. So I'll start this passage again. One morning, as he mounted his horse, Napoleon announced that he was going to review the naval forces and gave orders for the ships lying at anchor to quit their moorings, saying that he meant to inspect them in the open sea. He set off with Roustam for his usual ride, expressing the wish to find everything ready on his return at an hour he mentioned. Everyone knew that Napoleon's wish was his will. During his absence, this was once conveyed to Admiral Brou, who replied with imperturbable coolness that he was very sorry, but the review would not take place that day. In consequence, not a vessel moved. On his return, Napoleon asked whether all was steady. He was told what the Admiral had said. This reply was so unfamiliar in tone, had to be twice repeated to him, and with a violent stamp of his foot he sent for the Admiral, who waited on him directly. Napoleon, as the Admiral was not quick enough for his liking, went to meet him halfway from the hut. His Majesty was attended by the staff, who gathered around him in silence. His eyes were flashing fire. Admiral, he said in a choked voice, why have you not carried out my orders? Sire, replied Admiral Brou with respectful firmness, there is a frightful storm getting up. Your Majesty can see that as well as I. Your Majesty does not wish to expose so many brave fellows to needless danger. And in fact, the heaviness of the air and the low rumbling that could be heard in the distance bore out the Admiral's fears only too well. Sir, returned Napoleon, with increasing irritation, I gave an order. Once more, why did you not carry it out? I am the sole judge of consequences. Obey. Not funny. Can't imagine how frightful it were. Sire, I shall not obey. You are insolent, sir. And Napoleon, who was still carrying his riding whip, advanced on the Admiral with a threatening gesture. Admiral Brew fell back a step, laying his hand on his sword hilt. "Sire," he said, turning pale, "be careful." All who stood by were frozen with terror. For some time Napoleon remained motionless, his hand raised, and his eyes fixed on the Admiral, who, on his side, retained his terrible posture. At last Napoleon threw down his whip. Brew let go his sword hilt, and awaited bareheaded, in the silence, the outcome of this horrible scene. "Rear Admiral Magnon," said Napoleon, "you will instantly carry out the movement I ordered. As for you, sir," he went on, looking once more at Admiral Brew, "you will leave Boulogne within 24 hours and retire to Holland. Go." Napoleon immediately walked off. As they went, some officers, but only a very few, clasped the Admiral's outstretched hand. Meanwhile, Rear Admiral Magnon was putting the fleet through the fatal movement Napoleon had insisted on. Hardly had the first arrangements been made when the sea became dreadful to behold. The sky, dense with black clouds, was streaked with lightning, thunder rolled out continually, and the gale broke all the lines. In short, what the Admiral had foreseen took place, and the most appalling storm scattered the vessels, till there seemed there could be no hope for them. Napoleon, with head bent and folded arms, was anxiously facing the breach, when suddenly dreadful cries were heard. More than 20 gunboats full of soldiers and sailors had been flung on the rocks, and the unhappy men on board, struggling with the raging waves, were crying for help, but no one dared to give. Napoleon saw his generals and officers shuddering with horror around him. And yeah, this video is getting a bit long now. We usually keep them under 20 to 25 minutes, it's 26 minutes. I'm going to end it there. So yeah, that's just a book on Napoleon. I'll do another video on some other books I've got on Napoleon and some other books I'm reading as soon as I can. I just thought I'd share those passages. Thanks a lot. Have a lovely day.